The political environment creates complexity for today's ranchers, especially in the West, where public lands must be accessed for grazing. Add the political dynamic with regulatory red tape and environmental pressure involving wild horses, sage grouse, and other wildlife, and you have a perfect storm for grazing permits. Elizabeth Howard, a lawyer who works extensively on these issues, shares some advice for producers.
Being a public lands rancher with all the challenges that are faced, whether it's the Endangered Species Act or lots of process and trying to get even just a fence built. I'm from Oregon, and like many other Western states, it's necessary to have a ranch that has both private and public lands in order to be economically viable. And over the years, I've just found that there's so many things that producers can do before we get to the litigation stage that often can be, frankly, more successful. One way you can fix your problems with the agency is by looking for creative ways to fix their problems. And so I represent ranchers in Southeast Oregon, and they had a really significant wild horse issue. We were about 4 times over the number of horses that are supposed to be in this area. They'd had pretty major reductions in the amount of grazing that they could have on their allotment. And so, we talked about litigating that issue and filing a lawsuit against the Bureau of Land Management, but just as we talked about it and we're honest about it, we thought, well, we could win that case. But at the end of the day, the real issue for the BLM is that they don't have a place to put horses. They don't have a long-term solution. So we decided to go a creative route and talked with the BLM about actually setting up a wild horse training facility so that we could, if they did do one large gather, we would then have a plan for all of the horses that would be gathered sort of in smaller bunches long-term, and the BLM loved that idea. And so we've been working on that for about a year, and this last fall, the BLM gathered about 1,000 horses. There wasn't a lawsuit filed on the gather, and so we're creating local jobs. We're doing something locally, and we fixed the wild horse problem. So just being really proactive in those relationships, having a plan, implementing it over time, just staying connected with your neighbors and knowing what's going on will help you stay tuned to the issues that you need to be following.
We was having a lot of scour issues in baby calves and was, night and day doctoring calves, so we got some of the product and tried it. Had a hard time believing the results that we've seen. 5 cc's down the throat of these little calves, and the next day they was up nursing their mothers and just doing great. Since we started the Cattle Active program, we're not seeing any sickness. I mean, it was just almost cut it out completely. I'm Rusty Wayman, and I use Cattle Active.
At 44 Farms, we believe work starts at sunup and doesn't stop until sundown. We believe in order to live off the land, you have to love and respect it. We believe that cattle aren't just raised, they're nurtured. And we believe when you do things right, with honesty and integrity, well, things like quality and consistency happen naturally. 44 Farm Steaks, responsibly raised all-natural beef.
I use an AI service to increase the genetic potential of my herd. We're using top-notch bulls. There's no way I could afford to go buy the bulls that I'm using now without AI. I knew Shane would be somebody that could get the job done and provide me with the help that I needed to do a project like this. I AI myself, but there's no way that I could do 250 head in a project by myself, so I relied on select sires to help me fill that gap.